Up. 1, 2, 3, forward. Ready. Aim. Fire. Aim. Aim. Fire. Ready. Front. Left. Face. Left. Face. Freeze it. Legs. Forward. Legs. Right. Face. Forward. Up.
Can everybody be seated, please? Behind you. Sorry. That's good. That's good. We always like to be prepared. And it's always good to rehearse once or twice before you do it.
Good morning and thank you for being here. Welcome to today's Veterans Day ceremony here at Legacy. I'm Lieutenant Commander Gary Domnessy, United States Coast Guard, retired. It's an honor to be your Master of Ceremonies for today's event and to thank you all for attending. Please turn off your cell phones. Thank you. Now please stand for the national anthem.
No, don't. Please remain standing.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's going to take a little while to get this set up.
Just to let you know, Growl's not abandoning anybody. They just want to watch what's going on up there, too. So we're taking a little break. Ready? I love electronics.
You packed your bags and shut the door. You brought
let's do a little soft shoe shuffle. By the way, thank you all for coming out today. It's first time we've done this, what, a year and a half? And it's nice to see everybody. We're honoring all veterans today. Armed Forces Week is for the active duty people. Memorial Day is for those who've gone before. And of course, Veterans Day for us. Because we be veterans. And we're still glad to be here, trust me.
Now, before we start this, you're going to be able to watch on the slides above exactly what we're talking about down here. Now, this flag was flown over Fort McHenry many years ago, and so I kept it as a souvenir, so we're going to use this flag today. The 13 stripes represent the original 13 states: Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. The second fold, the 50 stars, represent our 50 United States of America.
Okay.
Fold number 3, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry. These are the times, on fold 4, these are the times that make men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands now deserves the love and the thanks of man and woman Thomas Paine. Fold number 5. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the Declaration of Independence. Fold number 6. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our possibility to do ordain and establish this Constitution, the United States of America, the United States Constitution. Fold number 7. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances, the First Amendment. The basis of our political system is the right of the people to make and to alter their constitutions of government. George Washington. My God, how little do they, my countrymen, know of the precious blessings they are in possession of which so no other people on this earth enjoy. Thomas Jefferson. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in the liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Abraham Lincoln. Fold number 11. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my hand beside the golden door. Emma Lazarus, inscription on a statue of liberty. Fold number 12. Ask not what you can do for your country, but what you can do for your country. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Fold number 13. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content Martin Luther King, Jr. Thank you. We're here to honor our service members of the 102nd anniversary of Armistice Day, or better known as Veterans Day. We gather here today to honor our service members who are considered the top 1% of all the population who served in all services, and to remember the sacrifices that they have made and the courage that it takes to defend honor, duty, and country. A Greek philosopher once said, "The bravest are surely those who have the clearest vision of what is before them, glory and danger alike, and yet notwithstanding, go out to meet it." We are here today to honor our heroes and to remember their achievements, their courage, and their dedication, and to say thank you to them whenever on the battlefield or here at home in war and or in peace. Look around you at some of the heroes who join us in this group today, and remember those who are here in spirit only. A person cannot help but feel awed by the enormity of what we as veterans have encountered. We are in the midst of patriots and families and the friends of those who have nobly served. I would ask all service members and veterans to stand and remain standing until I please step, please. We thank you for your service and for answering the call to duty. You have made our armed forces the most respected in the world. You were asked to do more than you ever expected, and you did so. You, ladies and gentlemen, are part of the 1% of the population who served. Please be seated. The service members we honor today came from all walks of life, and they share several fundamental qualities. They possess courage and pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty, and integrity, all qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. We have awarded medals to many soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, both men and women, and added their names to monuments to honor them and for bravery. But nothing, and I mean nothing, can ever replace the hole left behind by a fallen service member, or those coming home with disabilities, both mental and physical. And no number of medals or ribbons can comfort the ones left behind. Today, people throughout the country will gather just as we are doing here today, to remember, to honor, to pay gratitude to those who have served our country. I would like to now introduce one of our guests, Benjamin Mack-Jackson of the Veterans History Project, author of World War II for teens, as teenagers, World War II History for Teens, Understanding the Major Battles, Military Strategy, and the Art of War. Benjamin started this project years ago and has earned a place in the history by showing others through his museum, which travels around the country, about World War II. Now his book, World War II History for Teens, is available in the back. Welcome back, Benjamin.
back. It's been far too long. But I've been coming to programs here at Legacy of Leesburg since 2015. It's hard to believe. But like I said, it's good to be back. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Benjamin Mack-Jackson. I'm 19 years old now, and I'm the founder of the World War II Veterans History Project, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to sharing and preserving the stories of World War II veterans. So it's a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and I founded this in 2015. And ever since then, Gary has invited me to be part of these programs, and I'm truly grateful for the backing that this community has given me in getting the nonprofit off the ground and making it what it's become today. So the goal of the project is to educate and inspire future generations about the stories of our greatest generation, World War II veterans. And in doing so, we collect oral histories of World War II veterans and eyewitnesses, and preserve historical artifacts, which there's a selection of in the back today. In addition, educational programs and speaking engagements like today are a cornerstone of the nonprofit's work. I've conducted over 100 oral histories with World War II veterans over the past 5 or 6 years now. And each one of these stories is just as special as the next to me. And I started these when I was 13, and the first veteran I interviewed was 92. So despite this really large age gap, we had a fantastic interview, and it's inspiring me now to do over 100 more. The youngest veteran I've interviewed was 91, the oldest 105. And the life lessons that someone in that age range can provide for me as a teenager in 21st century America is truly something to be appreciated. And those are the lessons that I'm hoping to share with my generation and future generations. And so what started, as a personal endeavor to collect stories and just learn more about the war has really transformed into a multifaceted mission to not only capture the stories, but share them with more of my generation. Of course, artifacts and memorabilia from the war is also an integral part of our mission to capture and preserve stories. And our collection is quite diverse now. So it started off, it's just a small display, and now we have everything from a small dog tag to an 18,000-pound Higgins boat, an LCVP, which is currently in storage awaiting restoration. I obtained that in April of last year, and it remains the biggest acquisition to date. And every artifact that you see in the display back there and in our entire collection was either donated by the veteran themselves that I interviewed or family members of veterans. So they're not just artifacts in a museum, but they're stories that I'm telling of these heroes' lives. And the museum allows people of all ages, to connect with history in a unique way and get up close with pieces of history from over 75 years ago. And these displays have traveled all across the United States, making appearances at schools, events, and programs like this. So today is Veterans Day, and of course, first I'd like to thank all of the veterans in the room for your service. It means a lot to me and my generation, what you did to fight for our freedoms. And I'd like to feature 3 World War II veterans that I've had the privilege of interviewing, whose stories mean a lot. To start, I'd like to introduce Jim Fralking, who was a first lieutenant in the Army Air Force during World War II, and he piloted P-38 and P-51 aircraft during the war. He flew his first mission on D-Day, which was quite an introduction to combat, as you might imagine, and it really taught him lessons for the remainder of the conflict that he flew. He was shot down over enemy-occupied Holland in September of 1944, and thanks to help from the Dutch resistance, he evaded capture for weeks. A Dutch family hid him in their farmhouse from the Germans, with the Germans oftentimes living right above his room. It was quite a scary experience for him, and I was grateful to have the opportunity to preserve his story. His interview is also featured in Normandy Revisited, which is a documentary film that I created. I believe I spoke about it last time I was here. We were just in the beginning stages of production then, but the film is complete, and I'll be showing you a trailer and how to watch it later on today. So that's Jim right there in his Army Air Force uniform with his spiffy-looking crusher cap that they wore after achieving 50 missions. He's in the group photograph up there, and of course that's me and Jim going through a binder of his service memorabilia. Of course, honoring the female service members is also a critical part to understanding the war in its entirety. And I've had the honor to interview several female service members from all branches, Army, Navy, Marines, etc. But this one in particular, Dorothy Baggett, who was in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps, was my first female veteran interview, and it remains a special one for me to this day. She served as an Army nurse in the European theater and treated American soldiers all across France and into Germany, and eventually ended up at the liberation of Dachau concentration camp, where she spent several months in the camp treating the prisoners who were suffering from an unexplainable amount of diseases and illnesses. And until she passed, that memory was very vivid in her mind. But yeah, I interviewed her, I believe I was 13 at the time when I interviewed her, and that experience of hearing her stories and what she went through really stuck with me and inspired me to continue this mission. And that's Dorothy there on the left, back in the States as an Army nurse. The picture up in the top right is actually taken in Dachau concentration camp, as is the one below. She and her fellow nurses actually lived in the SS barracks that were located on the site of the camp. And she recalled how horrible the conditions were for the prisoners outside and in their barracks, but the SS facility was far more civilized, as she would put it. Had all sorts of fancy china and furniture. It was really a stark contrast to what the guards were living in compared to the prisoners, and she made that quite clear in her interview. I'd like to also talk about Glenn Christians, who served in the U.S. Navy during World War II, another one of my very early interviews, and he was with the Naval Armed Guards, so he was part of the Navy, but was stationed aboard merchant vessels, which were civilian ships crossing the Atlantic under threat of German U-boats all throughout 1942 until the end of the war. He was sunk 3 times by German U-boats and survived all 3 times, and also went on a secret mission to resupply the French resistance, in which he was awarded the French Legion of Honor, which is the highest award that can be given to an American service member from France. He remained very proud of that award until he passed away, and there, of course, he is holding his Legion of Honor. There's Glenn with his wife and son. Of course, up on the top, with a couple of his sailor buddies during the war. And there's Glenn and I during one of the many events that we did together. He would come to all sorts of events that I would have. Yeah, it's sad that he's since passed away, but I always remember his service and everything that he's done to help my mission. Of course, the museum, as I mentioned, is also a very important part of sharing these stories. So I'm going to talk about 3 individuals whose stories are featured in the museum here today. First, I'd like to introduce you to Frank Nader, who served as a sergeant in the U.S. Army. He entered on March 30th, 1944, which is relatively late in the war, and didn't arrive until Europe until I believe it was February 1945. And he was attached to the 16th Armored Division, which was one of the last armored divisions formed in the European theater. They fought under Patton's Third Army, but their role in the final stages of World War II, including the capture of Czechoslovakia and the eastern half of Germany, was really important. So when they captured the town of Pils in Czechoslovakia, I believe it was May 6th and 7th, 1945, so literally days before the war ended. This was the furthest advance that American troops had made in the east, and it eventually ended up becoming Soviet territory. So our troops had advanced so far that it was past the boundary that had been set by the Allies during their conferences. And so we had to eventually retreat out of that zone. But his service was on that farthest point in Europe, which makes it an interesting story. This is the collection of artifacts that was donated by his daughter, who is actually here with us in the audience today. So I'd like to recognize her and thank her for entrusting me with these artifacts. So a round of applause, please. And of course, his collection is on display in the museum today, and I would be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure she would be as well. Here are some photographs that he either took The top one was taken by him. That's of the Remagen Bridge, which was one of the more famous bridges over the Rhine River during World War II. There he is in his army uniform, and of course, the famous M1 carbine in use there on the bottom left. The next veteran that I'd like to introduce you to is George Hilbert, Jr., who served in the U.S. Army Air Force as a P-39 Air Cobra pilot in the South Pacific. The Army Air Force in the European theater is one of the more, I'd say, talked about aspects of World War II, but when it comes to the Pacific, it's a very forgotten chapter. So when I had the opportunity to acquire this collection, I jumped at the opportunity to tell his story and the story of the Army Air Corps in this region of the world. Hilbert received the Distinguished Flying Cross for valor in combat. He was shot down by Japanese fighters off the coast of Australia in 1943, and he bailed out of his plane, survived, and was later rescued by Australian Army patrols. And this grouping also has a connection to this community. It was actually donated by Gary and his wife. It's Gary's wife's father's grouping that you see here. And his uniform, his flight suit, his medals, and a whole bunch of other artifacts from the war are on display back there. So thank you, Gary, for Here's the full collection of artifacts that you can see on display there. The famous pinks and greens dress uniform, some photographs, and other field gear and related items, all on display back there, as I mentioned. The final veteran that I'm going to talk about today is James Fitzgerald, who served in the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II. He was a corporal that specialized in communications, and so he was stationed at Hawaii for the entirety of his service after training at Marine Corps Air Station Iwa, which was at Pearl Harbor. He was attached to a Marine Air Wing, and while he never saw direct combat, the work that he did with his communications and telephone communications had a direct impact on frontline Marines and their ability to fight the war across the Pacific theater. And this collection also has a direct link to legacy, so I'd like to ask James's daughter to please stand, Jill, and recognize her today. So this collection is entirely photographs. There's hundreds of original photographs that she donated to the collection, which share a very different side of World War II than you normally see. So of course there's the posing photographs with rifles and bayonets in training, but there's also very personal photographs that are not as common. So of course you have a great picture there with the Hawaiian leis in front of the war bombs poster. And there's James with a dog there on steps in Oahu. The photo albums, of course, are not on display here today because they are incredibly fragile, and to bring them and have people flip through them would be, detrimental to their survival. But the entire collection, or a good part of it, is digitized in the form of a video that can be seen on my YouTube channel, which I will provide a link for following the program. So this is one of the more interesting photograph collections that I've had the privilege to obtain. And so those are the three artifacts that I'd like to talk about today, and they all have a direct connection to this community, which I'm very grateful for, of course. I forgot about this. A very interesting aspect, probably the most interesting aspect of that collection. So during World War II, following Pearl Harbor, these were commonly given out at recruiting stations, at war bonds drives, and it's essentially a comical element to the Pearl Harbor attack. The Japanese or an Axis hunting license, and on the back there's like a thing where you can mark off a tally. It's quite an interesting piece of history, and of course this was issued to him on the 7th of June 1943, and it says that he is a full-fledged member of the Good Hunters Legion and issued his license and entitled to shoot the works. Now, artifacts in a museum are one thing, but to have the opportunity to visit the battlefields where these campaigns took place is really something else. And I've been fortunate to travel across Europe and visiting battlefields from Normandy to Denmark and Germany and the Battle of the Bulge region. And so I'd like to share a few photographs from those trips here. So in France, evidence of the war is really clear still to this day, especially in the Normandy region, where the famous D-Day landings took place. This is a bunker off of Omaha Beach, where the Germans had an 88 cannon sticking out the hole there in the bunker. And this photograph was actually taken at around 11 o'clock at night, if you can believe that. The light was just incredible, and it was pretty eerie, being there in the evening and knowing that on a similar evening, Allied troops were preparing for the invasion that would take so many soldiers to their death the following morning. And this is a World War II veteran who I had the privilege to travel to France with. And this was his first time back visiting the battlefields where he served during the war. He's standing here in front of a bunker where he was actually shot through the neck and survived and managed to fight across the rest of the European theater with his unit, Chester Caution. And his story is also told in Normandy Revisited, the documentary film. In Germany, the experience that I had was a lot different than Normandy. The relics were not as easy to find. So we ventured deep into the forests of the Rhineland and looking for evidence of the Siegfried line. I'm holding a shell, an artillery shell, a very mangled artillery shell that we found lying amongst a batch of trees that was fired by Allied forces onto a nearby bunker that was in this forest that was completely destroyed by Allied bombardment in 1945. And here are this is evidence of the Siegfried line. These are dragon's teeth, as they were known, anti-tank traps that the Germans put up to stop our tanks. Didn't really work, but there was hundreds of miles of these dragon's teeth that stretched all across the Rhineland region of Western Germany. But like I said, they didn't really work. Our tanks quickly adapted to them. We put little forks on the edge of our Sherman tanks and we just plowed right through them. So very typical of the German engineering effort. They went over the top, but didn't really think about how it could be beat really easily. In Luxembourg, of course, Luxembourg is a very small country, one of the smallest in Europe, yet very fierce fighting raged during the Battle of the Bulge. And we were driving along a road, again, in very rural Luxembourg, all farms, nothing else. We found a jerry can that was pocked full of bullet holes off the side of the road, and that's that there. We found that, and it was quite an experience. We were out looking for the site where this particular battle took place, driving along this road, and one of the guys in our vehicle said, "Isn't that a jerry can?" So we stopped, we got out, and it was an original World War II, dated 1944 actually. It had bullet holes in it, either used for target practice or damaged in combat. We will never know, but still an interesting discovery. And I actually managed to have that shipped back to the States, and I have it. It's not here with me today. I should have brought it. That would have been an interesting. But I do have that with me. I managed to bring that back. It was quite a chore, but it was worth it. Luxembourg also has many German bunkers. They're often more untouched than the ones that you'll see in France or in Germany, because again, it's not as well known of a campaign. This particular photograph, quite difficult to see, but that's a German air vent inside the bunker underground, and it's talking about, it says Beluftung, which means air in, and by Tag nicht heißen, which is essentially by the day, don't put heat in here. So it was essentially an air conditioning heating system that they would have pumped through this bunker deep underground. This is right on the German-Luxembourg border on the bridge. The U.S. 5th Infantry Division fought here very fiercely to capture this particular position. Now in Belgium, in December 2019, I traveled with another World War II veteran back to the place where he fought. This was again his first time back since the war, and he visited the grave of a fallen comrade that was killed right alongside of him during the Battle of the Bulge. Quite an emotional moment to be there and witness that reunification of him and his comrade at the Henri Chapelle American Cemetery in Belgium. And we also took Joe across towns in Belgium where he was treated as a hero by all of the residents from old to young. Here is a Joe being paraded through the streets of a small Belgian town. That's his daughter. Very emotional experience for everyone all around. And you got to meet the Belgian school children who were out there waving American flags, waving Belgian flags, and appreciating his service in liberating their country during World War II. They sang our national anthem and the Belgian national anthem, which was quite impressive, and it was really a beautiful moment. And I think that when traveling overseas to Europe, especially in Belgium and France, I had the idea that the story of World War II is taught and appreciated much more than it is by the youth here in America. And I think there's one good reason for that. It's the fact that the war was on their doorstep and it was not on ours. And so the fact that American soldiers liberated their countries and saved them from tyranny is an important part of their school curriculum, and the youth still remember today. It's really a beautiful thing to see them waving our flags in the streets. And that leads me to my next topic of discussion, which is education. Probably the most important aspect of my mission, and sharing the stories that I've captured with future generations. Now, I've done dozens of speaking engagements at schools all across the country, from kindergarten all the way through college, my own peers, ensuring that these stories live on, talking about the veterans I've interviewed, talking about the travel experiences I've had, bringing artifacts from the war and allowing students to handle them. It really makes the war a personal experience. Obviously, the museum displays are integral to that mission because, let's face it, how many students my age and younger have the opportunity to interact firsthand with artifacts from World War II, often 75, 80 years old? It doesn't happen very often. One of the more common things I hear is that, oh, I've never been to a museum before. This is my first time seeing an actual artifact up close. It's things like that that continue to motivate me to bring these traveling displays to schools and events all across the country, and allow students to have this opportunity to be put face to face with history. You can just see, this is one of the Museum in a Box programs that I do. We ship a trunk full of World War II artifacts to schools, and this they can have them for a period of time. Students can explore the contents of this trunk. This is an ice jacket that this girl is holding from the war. It just brings out this excitement in them that isn't common when teaching history normally. And I have always said that the way that history is taught now is not the right way. We need to modernize our history curriculum in order to appeal it to our generation, which is very visual learners, I would say. And of course, presentation to all groups of people are a cornerstone of the nonprofit and our work. In everything that I do, I've always come back to one quote, and this has stuck with me since the beginning. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This quote is often misattributed to Winston Churchill, but Spanish philosopher George Santayana was the first to put this into writing. And it is really a testament to our times and the importance of remembering history in order to not repeat the mistakes of the past. And I think that in today's day and age, it's more important than ever. So that's why I continue to work to educate my generation in all forms. And this is the latest edition of that educational platform. When the pandemic first began, about, a year and a half ago, time has flown, I was approached by a publisher asking me to write a book about World War II that was dedicated for a teenage audience. I jumped, of course, at that opportunity and wrote World War II History for Teens, which allows the war to come alive really in a way that's easy for my generation to connect with. And I've used all of the lessons and experiences that I've learned from these World War II veterans when creating this book. And while their stories are not individually featured, I've consulted with veterans when creating this, and all of their lessons are incorporated in the overall course of the book. So it takes a look at every major battle of the war from Europe to the Pacific, and explores and connects how World War II has impacted and affects the world we live in today. So it really comes full circle from the start of the war into how it all wraps together with the world that we have today. It's dedicated not only to World War II veterans, but future generations who, in my opinion, have a responsibility to remember these stories and carry them on for generations to come. And inside the book, you'll find topics. This particular topic is U-boats, and it talks all about the particular campaigns that they participated in. There's photographs, there's little sidebars to introduce specific arms and armor, notable individuals, and lesser-known facts. Context is also included in the sidebars that explains decisions and what could have been if another decision was made, allowing for critical thinking to come into play there. And the book is about 150 pages. It's an easy read, and I've heard from those who have had the opportunity to read it that it's it encompasses the entire campaign without being too run on. I think that's a problem with textbooks that we have today, is that everything is just told with facts and figures, and this really encompasses the personal side of the conflict, which I think is really important to understanding it in its entirety. Now, Normandy Revisited, I introduced here at Legacy, I believe it was in November of 2019, when I showed a brief video about that and talked about how it was in the works. Well, Normandy Revisited is now done. It's the first feature-length documentary film that I've had the privilege of creating. It explores the war, the Normandy campaign, from the perspective of 14 veterans. It also incorporates footage from my trip to Normandy and historic artifacts that relate to the invasion. And I'd like to show a trailer for the film now, and it really encompasses the entire film in everything it details. So.
We were on that beach approximately 2 hours before we moved off of it. We couldn't stand up because anyone who attempted to stand up was killed. When I landed in a field by myself, I was 18 years old. I said, what am I doing here? And that was it. That was the start of the war. The noise was bordered on unbearable. The smells were terrible too. But the machine gun fire and rifle fire that just went over our heads like a bunch of bees, and I'm talking thousands and thousands of small arms rounds, every minute passing over your head. It was pretty bad. And to have survived was a miracle. A miracle. Could make a world for you or kill you. Anybody tells you that was not scared to death is lying to you. They're trying to make a good picture of it. It's not a good picture. It's a dirty picture. It's hell on wheels. It was the most dead Americans that I've ever seen in my life. Floating in the water and on the shores. The Germans were positioned to like shooting fish in the bow. It looked like you could step from one ship to the next on D-Day. It was just a remarkable sight. We've been going in a lot of towns. The French were out there waving to us, tears were in our eyes. I felt so happy that we did that for them. Well, they haven't forgotten. And they were just, it was so beautiful. supposed to do, and that was to leave those men off of that beach. And that's what I did.
That was from the summer of 2020, and now the film is complete and available for viewing. There's business cards over there with the link where you can watch the full thing, and DVDs are also available for a donation to the nonprofit. To stay up to date on the work that I'm doing, you can follow the World War II Veterans History Project on Facebook. I post 3 times a week there, highlighting a veteran on Monday, an artifact on Wednesday, and a photograph from the war on Friday. The YouTube channel also features all the interviews that I've done that are complete and edited, and we also have Normandy Revisited available to watch on the YouTube channel as well. You can learn more about the project and the work we do at World War II VeteransHistoryProject.com. Again, all the links are on information on the cards in the back, where you can explore the project and the work that we do. In addition, we have a couple items available that you can get in exchange for donation that help support our mission to continue to interview World War II veterans, reach students, and continue to travel and capture these stories across the U.S. and the world. So we have Normandy Revisited in DVD form. You can also get a copy of World War II History for Teens. I'd be glad to sign it for you. There's also sand from Utah and Omaha Beach, which is one of our more popular gifts, especially around this time, the holiday season. I brought this stuff directly back with me from my trips. It's 100% authentic and real. And it really is giving the gift of history. This sand is from some of the more bloody beaches that American troops have ever fought on. And it's really incredible to hold that in your hand. We also have a few t-shirts available. There's only a few left, so if you want one, I do it quick. We are working on some new designs and styles for next year, but this is the remainder of everything we've got now there. So again, thank you all so much for the opportunity to come back. It's good to be back, and I hope to come back again next year and share an update on my mission. Thank you so much.
We have a second guest speaker, Lieutenant Commander Catherine A. Wilbur, United States Navy, retired. I met her yesterday by accident, but she's already on my list. I was totally surprised that she was sitting right behind me at a function for veterans. She's an RN, and she sent me her bio, and it was 3 pages long, and it's small type, and I'm going, my God, it'll take me an hour and a half to read through this for you folks. We shortened up just a little bit, so. Anyway, she's going to be talking about women, veterans, and Ashland's House. So let's welcome Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, Catherine Wilbur.
Can you hear me? Yes. Before I get into my speech, if you will, I will go ahead and tell you a little bit more about myself. I am a combat veteran, operating room nurse. I served 20 years. I spent 9 years in the Army, got out as enlisted, finished my nursing degree, and became an operating room nurse. My goal was to take care of our combat wounded. I served in Afghanistan for 2 years and achieved just that. I've taken care of the most traumatic injuries, including Travis Mills, who's one of 5 surviving quadruple amputees. God did that. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Today we are here to celebrate and to honor and to commemorate the dead and the living. The young men and women who in every war since the country began have given testimony to their loyalty to their country and their own great courage. First and foremost, let me begin today by recognizing all among us who have been a part of the great brotherhood and sisterhood we call the U.S. military. Our veterans, active duty service members, guardsmen, and reservists, your service and sacrifice have kept our country safe and free. If you're able, please stand to be recognized. I know, again. Did you know on October 7th, 2016, the Veterans Day Moment of Silence Act was signed and calls for 2 minutes of silence every Veterans Day to recognize and reflect on the service and sacrifice of all veterans, past and present. The time set is for 2:11 p.m. and allows for 50 states and Puerto Rico to take part simultaneously, but I'd like to do that now. Please join me now for 2 minutes. 2 minutes of silence for those who are missing and never made it back. I want to thank you for that. As a woman veteran, I am honored and humbled that I was asked to come and speak with you today on Veterans Day. As a speaker, I am given a special role. I am given the power for my voice to be heard. Of course, there's also the challenge of making my speech interesting enough to capture the attention of this audience. In years past, I've attended many events, and not many, if actually, spoke on women in service. This Veterans Day speech is going to be a little different than most of you have heard. I want to try and share with you some history of women in service and their sacrifices to our country and milestones that are not often shared. Did you know women have been serving in the military since the Revolutionary War, standing alongside men behind the scenes and on the front line, with courage and determination in one capacity or another. In 1782, Deborah Sampson served in the General Washington's army, disguised as a man. She was wounded after 2 years of service, and her true identity was revealed. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, at the onset of the Civil War, Dr. Walker traveled to Washington to join the Union Army. She was denied commission as a medical officer. They offered her to join as a nurse. She declined. She was denied compensation. She was denied commission as a medical officer and offered her to join as a nurse. She declined, but served anyway as an unpaid volunteer surgeon at the U.S. Patent Office Hospital in Washington. In 1862, she worked as an unpaid field surgeon in the field near the front lines at Fredericksburg and Chattanooga. Throughout the war, she wore men's clothing, arguing that doing so made her job easier. She was almost arrested for trying to impersonate a man. In 1863, Dr. Walker became the first female U.S. Army surgeon following her commission as a, quote, contract acting assistant surgeon, or civilian, during the Civil War. She routinely crossed the lines to treat civilians. In 1864, she was detained by Confederate troops and arrested for spying. After spending 4 months as a POW, Dr. Walker was freed in a prisoner exchange, man for man. President Andrew Johnson signed a bill on November 11, 1865, to present Walker with the Medal of Honor for meritorious service. The medal, however, was stripped from her and several others by government action from 1916 to 1917. It was reinstated to her in 1977. She remains the only woman to receive the Medal of Honor. Dr. Walker spent the remainder of her life advancing the cause of women's rights. Just so you know, there's over 3,000 Medal of Honor recipients in our nation today, and one has only been given to a woman. In 1866, Cathay Williams became the first black female to enlist when she joined the U.S. Army, again, as a man. She was the only known female Buffalo soldier. Historians have documented roughly 250 female Civil War soldiers, and there were certainly more who participated in every battle. In World War I, 33,000 women served as nurses, support staff, and more than 400 nurses died in the line of duty. In 1917, Loretta Walsh was the first woman to enlist in the U.S. Navy and the first woman to reach the rank of Chief Petty Officer. This opportunity also made her the first woman to serve in a non-nursing role capacity for any branch of the armed forces. In World War II, more than 400,000 women served at home or overseas as mechanics, ambulance drivers, pilots, administrators, nurses, and many other non-combat roles. 88 women were captured and held as prisoners of war in World War II. In 1942, the Women Reserves of the U.S. Coast Guard Reserve Program, officially nicknamed SPARS, was first established. The United States Naval Reserve, better known as WAVES, was the women's branch of the United States Naval Reserve during World War II. The WAVES served in 900 stations in the United States. Also in 1942, the Women Army Corps was the women's branch of the United States Army. It was created as an auxiliary unit, the Women Army Auxiliary Corps, and the Women Air Force Service Corps, or WASP. WASPs were civilian women pilots organizing whose members were United States Federal Service employees. Interesting enough, at that time, those women pilots had to be already women pilots. The men in that era who were pilots were trained and served. Women had to come already educated and trained in order to volunteer. The WAVES, 38 WASP members lost their lives. It wasn't until 1977, for the World War II service, the female members were granted veteran status, and in 2009 were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. In 1948, when a law was passed by Congress called the Women's Armed Service Integration Act, where women granted permanent status in the military and subject to military authority and regulations, which meant they were now entitled to have the veteran benefits. That's over 200 years after the fact women were serving. During the Korean War, over 50,000 women served at home and abroad. 500 Army nurses served in combat zones, and many Navy nurses served on hospital ships. In 1967, President Johnson signed Public Law 90 Tag 130, lifting grade restrictions and strength limitations for women in the military. In Vietnam, approximately 7,000 or more women served as nurses in all 5 divisions of the military: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. All were volunteers. Did you know that there are 8 women on the Vietnam Wall? All nurses who lost their lives. In 1990, U.S. Coast Guard Desert Shield began with 14 women reservists serving in the Persian Gulf. Also in 1990, Ensign Patricia A. McFerdich became the first female Coast Guard aviator to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross. The Distinguished Flying Cross is our nation's highest award for extraordinary aerial achievement. As a valor decoration, it ranks 4th in order of precedence and is awarded to recipients for heroism while participating in aerial flight. In 1991, an act of Congress allowed women to fly in combat missions. 1991, NASA's Eileen Collins was one of the first female pilots in the Air Force and in space. During the Persian Gulf War in 1991 to 1992, more than 41,000 women were deployed to a combat zone. 2 were taken captive. In 1996, Sergeant Heather Johnson Wagner was the first woman to earn the Tomb Guard badge, standing watch of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington, Virginia. Since her, there have been 3 other more women sentinels. In 2003, during the Iraq War, 3 Army women were taken prisoners of war in the first few days of the invasion. Jessica Lynch from West Virginia, Shawana Johnson, who was a Panamanian born and the first Black female prisoner of war in the military history of the United States, and Lori Pistawa, a Hopi native, woman to die in combat while serving in the U.S. military, and the first woman in the U.S. military killed in the Iraq War. In 2003, Lieutenant Holly Harrison became the first Coast Guard woman to command a cutter in combat zone. She was the first Coast Guard woman to be awarded the Bronze Star Medal. In 2005, during the War on Terror, Sergeant Leanne Hester became the first woman awarded the Silver Star for combat action. During her 25-minute firefight, Hester killed 3 insurgents. In 2010, the Army created Cultural Support Teams, a secret pilot program to insert women alongside Special Forces soldiers battling in Afghanistan. The Army reasoned that women could play a unique role in special op teams, accompanying their male colleagues on raids, and while those soldiers were reaching for insurgents, questioning the mothers, sisters, and daughters and wives living at the compound. Their presence had a calming effect on the enemy households, but more importantly, the CSTs were able to search adult women for weapons and gather crucial intelligence. They could build relationships, woman to woman. In 2011, Lieutenant Ashley White, one of those CST-2 members, gave her life along 2 Special Forces soldiers. There is actually a book written about her life and sacrifice to our country. This book has been said, Ashley's War, shares the remarkable stories of one of the first teams of women serving in the U.S. Army Special Forces Command. This team forged the path for American women to serve in harm's way all over the world and continue to make the ultimate sacrifice. In 2013, Rear Admiral June Ryan became the first prior enlisted woman to be promoted to flag rank. In 2015, Captain Christine Geist and Lieutenant Shane L. Haver became the first two women to complete Army Ranger School and earn their Ranger tabs. In 2020, an Army National Guard soldier marked a new milestone in the U.S. military, graduating from the grueling Special Forces qualification course to become the first woman to join the Green Berets. In 2021, women now make up 15% of active duty and 18% of the Guard and Reserves. There have been 100 military women held as POWs throughout American history. On Veterans Day, we also need to acknowledge our sisters who served. Valor knows no gender. If I can ask my sisters out there to please stand. Don't be shy, I know you're there. I personally want to thank you. For as long as this country has been fighting wars, at home or abroad, women have been injured and killed in combat zones. 160 women who made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as the families they left behind. They, or we, are all faced every day with trying to still be seen as veterans. We are here, we have been here, and we have served, and we have lost. The woman you pass as you walk down the street might not be wearing our nation's uniform today, but consider for a moment that a year or a decade or even a generation ago, she might have been one of our fellow citizens who was willing to lay down her life for strangers like you and me. And we can show how much we love our country by loving our women veterans as we love ourselves. Please don't ask me, is that my hat? Or are those my medals I am wearing? I give these scenarios because they have happened to me over and over again. I was once told, just because you wear an Atlanta Braves hat, that doesn't make you a member of the team. This statement alone was bad, but what really hurt was that this quote stranger that approached me off the street was a local VFW commander wearing his post shirt. He was supposed to be my brother. I personally have been overlooked as a woman veteran countless times that it angers me. I have taken care of our country's most severely wounded military members, male and female, direct from the flight line. I suffer from PTSD most of the time, in silence. I too have seen the reality of war up close. So yes, I am a member of the team. We have women veterans that are now serving in silence because they do not wish to be challenged, and they should not have to. In 1997, the National Women's Memorial for Veterans was established. It is located in Arlington. Even though some like to say Washington, the address is Arlington. But sadly, most people do not even know that it exists. It is not hard to find, and you don't really have to make a special trip to visit. You see, It is the gateway into our national cemetery. Arlington National Cemetery is considered a national park and is fully funded. However, the Women's Memorial, which was originally unfinished area of the National Cemetery, is considered now private, and we have to raise the money to preserve our legacy, or we will be closed down. Currently in the state of Florida, approximately 20,192 women veterans are living in poverty, and over 3,000 women veterans are homeless. This is why Villagers for Veterans, a nonprofit 501c3, is committed to building Lake County's first all-female veterans-only transition house. It will be located in Eustis, and it will help our women veterans to get off the street in a safe environment and acclimate back into society. We will focus on supporting women with shelter where we help them to navigate out of the current situation that made them homeless. This house will not support addiction, as we will not be providing any in-house treatments, but providing a safe space to get back on their feet. How can you help? We need to practice kindness for all. We can pay it forward, we can volunteer, we can serve, we can respect one another. We can always have each other's backs. We can come together to express our profound gratitude for the sacrifices and contributions that our female veterans have made. We have tons of ways that you can help. Ashley's brochures are in the back table near the back door. We're having a brick campaign for Ashley's house, which is again going to be located in Lake County in Eustis. It's going to be able to house 6 women veterans, 2 fully handicapped rooms, wheelchair accessible. It is being built from the ground up. We're going to have our ground break January 15th. You can also go online at villagersforveterans.org and look at some of the many activities that we put on and all fund, not just Ashley's House, but Villagers for Veterans and veterans in the community. It's not just for villagers, it's for villagers for veterans who seek assistance. Texas Tenors, March 14th. The Texas Tenors are the most successful group and are the 3rd highest selling artist in the history of America's Got Talent. Yay! With 3 Emmy Awards. They heard what we were doing and they have agreed to come just to help us raise money for Villagers for Veterans projects. They're classically trained, versatile tenors who have been honored to celebrate our nation, such as prestigious events at the White House, National Tree Lighting, the Boston Pops Fireworks Spectacular, and Congressional Medal of Honor ceremonies. But some of the most rewarding moments are been honoring our nation's veterans at each and every concert across the country. So if you're interested, please get there. Ashley's House Gala will be April 9th, and the Orchid Gala, honoring our women veterans, will be October 15th. So my women veterans, I'd love to give you more information about that. I want to thank you for taking the time to remember all of our heroes. They never gave up on us, and we can't give up on them. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. It is a quote from First Lieutenant, U.S. Army Nurse Corps, Ann Soch Brigham, World War II. Let the generations know that women in uniform also guaranteed their freedom, that all our resolve was just as great as the brave men who stood among us, and with victory our hearts were just as full and beat just as fast, that tears fell just as hard for those we left behind. God bless you, God bless our veterans, and please have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Commander. Thank you so much. We're going to do a presentation of service flags. So, post.
And because we're not huge, if you want to sing along, please feel free to, if you remember the words.
United States Army. United States Marine Corps. Flags posted. I'd also like to recognize the United States Merchant Marine and the National Guard. And somebody told me I should also recognize the new one on the market, which is the Space. I want to give our thanks to all who helped the production of this program, and to those of Hawthorne VFW for the 21 gun salute, to Bill and Elaine Leach for the flag raising ceremony, and Nancy Schley for the slide presentation, and the TNT committee for the sound and lights, and to our honor guard. United States Army Lou Goldstein, United States Marine Corps Lee Rennie, United States Coast Guard Glenn Gray, United States Navy Charlie Perrin, United States Air Force Don Wilkes. How about a round of hand for them? And for the flag folding ceremony, Chris DeVoe and Norman Howell. And Lee Rennie, excuse me.
Norman's supposed to.
And thanks to our guest speakers, Lieutenant Commander Catherine Wilgris, the United States Navy retired, and to Benjamin Mack-Jackson of the Veterans History Project.
I also wanted to have Pat come up. I don't remember her last name, but she's gonna be looking right at me. So this lady, good or bad, you decide. She's the one who invited me here, and I just wanted to thank her for allowing me to have a voice. And also, can I have my women veterans stand up one more time? I do have a token with Ashley's house on it that says woman veteran proudly served, and I would like to hand it to you directly. So I know some of you, so just stand up again. Don't make me.
I also want to thank all for you for attending today, and God bless you all and your families, and God bless our troops. And all servicemen and women, God bless America. Thank you very much.
Jay, just a minute, because we don't have time. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be out here very quickly. Any chairs that are touching wood, please, if you can, help us out, stack them 8 high, because we've got to get out of here by 11:45. Second thing, thank you to Jay Hickerson, and even though they're small, the Legacy Chorale.